Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Ledwell, and this is the Inspiration Show. Today in the show, I have a special guest who is a graduate of my Ultimate Success Masterclass, who is doing some fantastic work in helping people heal. And a lot of the work that she's doing is through her own life experience. And her story is truly an inspiring story, which is why I've asked her to be a guest here on the Inspiration Show. But before I introduce my special guest, I just want to let you know that if you are watching this show live on Facebook or on our YouTube channel after the show's over, make sure that you click the link below this video when the show's finished so you can take my 30-second quiz and we can figure out what's holding you back from success. So please let me introduce my special guest, Dawn Harris. How are you, Dawn?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. When I read about your story and everything that you've gone through in your life, you are like the poster child of, helping to give meaning to these things and then using these events to be able to really make a difference and help other people. So I really commend you for that. So why don't we start first with you telling us your story and how you got into doing the work that you do?
Well, it's going to be, first I want to thank you for being on the show. It's really an honor. It was actually one of my goals in the Ultimate Success Masterclass was to be a guest on this show. So it's really affirming that it's actually happening. And so I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Of course.
So my story is very multidimensional. So just to kind of give you an overview, so I'm not talking for days. Basically, when I was about 3 years old, my grandmother had a painting in her dining room that I was just so caught up in this painting, and I would just stare at it. And it was a painting of Christ knocking. And even at 3 years old, I never wanted to miss that knock. And so that's been a thread through my life. And I've really felt like I've had the ability to really hear that inner prompting and the knocking that lets me know when something needs to change. So about, several years ago, I was involved in environmental justice work. And that's really tough stuff. And I found myself extremely depleted and just really worn out. And I felt this inner prompting, this knocking, letting me know that that was not the best place for me. So some ideas started forming, but I didn't really know what that looked like yet. And I went back to school. I got my master's degree in education from Vanderbilt and continued with some professional experience. I was involved in research with brain-based learning and behavior change, all of these different things. I had also had a background in grief and loss through hospice. And I realized that I can bring all of these things together, my professional experience, the things that I've gone through in life, and just bring them all together to form something that can help those that are on the front line in environmental justice work. And then when I took your class, it really became solidified, and I realized that it doesn't need to just be that, it can be more. And it can be something that really is a support on people's life journey. So that's in a nutshell what I've done. I've created a virtual retreat center, and it provides support for people, whether they need rejuvenation or support on their grief and loss journey, or just engage in self-discovery.
Right. So it sounds like even from a young age, you could hear intuition. You could tap into your intuition. So obviously that's served you through, a lot of your life. So tell me about the retreats that you run and the work that you do. So do you teach people to also tap in and listen to that intuitive voice as well?
Yes. It's very personalized. So I engage in kind of a collaborative approach. So what we do is we engage in developing their own toolkit. And I have an approach to life that it can't be solved necessarily, that life will continue to present both blessings and difficulties. And so I really want them to develop the second nature of utilizing their toolkit to be able to face things when they come up.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about this toolkit. Okay. What have you got in your toolkit that helps people?
Well, I think the pause is one of my favorite, and it's super simple, but it's been so effective for me. So pause, be, and then prioritize. So what that means is in that moment when you might be experiencing, say you're frustrated because you're in traffic and somebody just cut you off, or you don't feel like you have enough time in the day to get everything done, whatever the circumstance, you just pause and then you be in that moment and then prioritize what is the next most important action. So that's a really effective one. And then I just put one in yesterday that I'm so excited about. It's a geospatial mapping that you can actually write on, you can scribble on it. And I actually did one for the place that I was born, and I drew a big heart and put healed, I forgive you, I'm whole. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
So I think those are going to be some really effective tools. And then there's other things. Nature. My whole programming is inspired by nature. I've always had a really strong connection with the natural world. And so that underlies everything that I do. So I think those are probably the most effective right off the top to share with you.
Yeah. And we were talking just before we started the show about breathing as well. And in that pause, when you can take a breath, it gives you just that little bit of time to make a choice.
Yes.
So rather than just reacting to what's going on, you're like, hold on a minute, how do I want to respond to this? How do I want to see this? I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. So I know that we touched before that you worked a lot of people with, through grief and broken hearts. So is that some of the work that you teach as well?
Yeah, it really depends on the person and what they're experiencing. I think that we've all had some really difficult points in our lives. Even if you have a really good life, I think there's been points where you've been really wounded, had a broken heart. For myself, my heart's been shattered several times, in fact. And I think that that's one of the most difficult things that you can experience. So I don't really think that there's necessarily a way to heal that. But I think what happens is that those ragged, those sharp edges, they can become softer. And you can find, for myself, my heart was like a barren piece of earth that had cracks, and in fact it had a wall around it, and it had no windows, it had no gates, and it had a roof on it. My heart was so walled off and shut down. And I found that through some work and engaging with a lot of the tools that are in the program, that my heart actually became like a spring garden. It became vibrant with life. And there's still evidence of that wall. There's still evidence of that dirt with the cracks. But now things that are really appropriate grow, like, a desert rose. And so I just feel like, healing can occur. And even in the most tragic of circumstances. So I think that it's one of my gifts, actually, is I always feel that there's potential and there's possibility and that I can do anything. And I think that allows me to really be authentic and available for people. So.
Yeah, because grief is such an interesting process. I don't think that, there is any rules. I don't think it's like, there's one process that fits everybody. Is that what you find is the same?
Yeah. Yeah, grief is very personal. There's really no right or wrong way to go through grief. And there can be some patterns, some parameters that people can go through, some processes. There's steps. Some people call them phases, stages. There's lots of different ways to look at it. It's very personal. And again, just like I talked about with life, it doesn't get solved, but it becomes a little easier, a little softer. But it's one of the most difficult things that you can experience. So it's about having somebody walk with you through it on that journey.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, I can see it's not just your experience, but it's your gifts that you have that really makes you unique in the way that you can really help people. So tell us a little bit about, I know we've talked about your intuition, but tell us a little bit about some of the gifts that have become alive within you that you use to be able to, help people heal.
I'm going to share a story. I was about 8 and we were on a road trip, and I don't really know where we were going, but we were in the middle of nowhere. And I had a dog, and he was like my best friend. He was a golden lab, and I would cry in his fur, and we did everything together. He's my buddy. His name was John. So we're on this road trip. We're in the middle of nowhere, and my dad stops the van and decides he's going to leave my dog in the middle of nowhere. And so I said, no. I mean, at 8 years old, I didn't have a lot of power,
Mm.
but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So my dad, I'll have to say, I'll preface all of this by saying that he's not a very nice person, but he decides that if I can throw a certain sequence in the I Ching. Now, the I Ching is an ancient um, philosophy that goes along with the Book of Changes, and you use 3 coins and you toss them, and then the sequence corresponds with passages that can tell you about your life. So in any event, he says that if I can throw this certain sequence, that I can keep my dog. So he throws, my mother throws, and then I throw and I get the sequence. So he had me do it again, and I did it again. And then a third time, I did it again. So I tell you that story because it signifies to me that inside of us, we have a lot of potential and possibility, and we can actually do anything if we really put our minds to it. Now, sometimes that doesn't end up being what we exactly envisioned, but there's always potential to move through difficulties and get to the other side.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, I think too that when we can get to that place of true belief, and when we can release the need to have it show up in a certain way, and if we remain open to the delightful possibilities that the universe has in store for us, then what we can create is even more delicious and more amazing than originally what we thought with our limited mind and our limited experience in life until that point. So I love that. So tell me the type of people that you're serving with the retreats. So the retreats are online, right? Or are they in person?
Yes, they're 100% virtual. It's a virtual retreat experience. And the idea is to reach people where they're at. And I utilize a nature room. I call them transformation rooms, online transformation rooms. There's a nature room, there's a music room, an artist loft, a writing studio, movement space. And so I bring all of these together to reach people where they're at. So it's in fact something that anybody could utilize. If it's somebody like, a spiritual healer, perhaps, that is setting time aside to develop goals and put a vision in place, or perhaps it's a professional that just needs time away to retreat from all of their responsibilities. Or it could be somebody that is stuck in repetitive behavior or negative thoughts. And in fact, my signature program is called Reset Your Defaults. And I developed that based on my own experiences. And what I have found is that I've woven together neuroscience and psychology, intuition, all of these different things into this program. And what it does is basically our neurons, when they communicate, they form pathways. And when we engage in negative or positive, but when we engage in negative thoughts and behaviors and actions, they can they create neural grooves. And so it's easier for that connection to continue and repeated behavior to continue. So the idea is that we will continue in that way unless we do something different. And so I focus on creating positive pathways. And the idea is that hopefully it will become second nature. And when difficulties arise, we'll continue in the positive pathway rather than the negative, so we have better outcomes. So it could be somebody like that, or it could be somebody that's experiencing grief and loss, or just somebody that wants to engage in self-discovery. I have all sorts of different types of retreats, from 2 hours to the Reset Your Defaults is 12 weeks. So there's quite an array for whatever your experience is.
Yeah. And I love that because you've set up a space where people can get this type of access to information, into healing, into the energetic gifts that you have, but from the comfort of their own home. Often with retreats like this, there's so much expense that's involved with flying and hotels and the whole thing. But this way, you're actually able to tailor make it to specific people and the challenges that they're facing. So tell me what's your big vision for your business.
I have lots of vision with this.
Yeah.
To remember to stay where I'm at, but also to look ahead, kind of like when I'm hiking. You have to look where your foot is, but also where you're going. What I would like to create is I'm calling it Revelation Gardens, and it's going to have like a forgiveness walk. So basically an on-site component of this as well. So there'll be a forgiveness walk, prayer gardens, some forest. I don't really like the term forest bathing, so I like maybe forest soaking. Just trying to get some of that rejuvenation from nature. So there'll be those components, and then some workshops. I'd like to have some really vibrant gardens to teach people where their food comes from, and have some cooking classes. So kind of a whole spectrum, but that's further down the road. So right now I'm focusing on this online mechanism.
Yeah. Well, Dawn, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to congratulate you on your success. Like you said, you had this germinating, you had you had a vision of what you wanted, but, being able to apply principles, you're able to create something that you're really helping to serve people, and to be able to rise above the circumstances in our lives, to be able to shift that to a place where, you're doing this service. I just highly commend you for it. And thank you so much for joining me today. So if people want to connect with you, where can we send them to do that?
treeoflifeeducationcenter.com.
Okay, perfect. Now we'll also have a banner to the side or a link underneath the video here, so you can click on that and go straight to Dawn's website, connect with her, and take advantage of some of the services that she's offering there. So thanks again, Dawn. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today.
Have a fabulous day.
Thank you. Now, I encourage you guys to share this video. You can do that by clicking the Facebook and the Twitter share buttons on the page. And don't forget, after the show's over, if you want to click that link below the video, it'll take you through to my 30-second quiz so we can figure out what's holding you back from success. So until next time, remember to live large, choose courageously, and love without limits. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.